guys, my name is Jo Rogers and I'm the CEO of NaviStar Legal, and today I am interviewing Alex Hamilton. He is the CEO of Radiant Law. Welcome, Alex.
Hi Jo, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We're going to have a little chit chat about business and also changes to the legal profession, the changes that Alex has seen, the changes that Alex has not yet seen, the opportunities, and kind of mix the two together, the business angle, because you have a business in law, and the legal aspect. How are some of the changes starting to filter through into the legal profession from the business environment, I guess. So Alex, tell me, what was it that got you to start Radiant Law? Let's start there.
Oh, my first midlife crisis, I like to describe it. So yeah, I was a very conventional lawyer. I started at Norton Rose, trainee there, got quickly into technology law. I was always interested in tech, and so kind of brought a couple of interests together. Fell in love with contracting, and ended up going to a company now as part of Pillsbury. It was called Shaw Pittman, American firm, sold out to the Americans to do outsourcing, and learnt my trade there. And then moved as a team to Latham & Watkins, made partner. So very, very conventional career. And then the midlife crisis happened, the Jerry Maguire moment. So I ended up writing this memo to Latham & Watkins Executive Committee suggesting that maybe, just maybe, we ought to do some innovation. Didn't get very far with that. Did get fired for it, but didn't get very far. And it became very clear that if you wanted to do something interesting in terms of changing how law is delivered, you're probably better off starting your own law firm than trying to fix one. Latham & Watkins obviously went on strength to strength in the 10 years since then, and second largest firm in the world now by ignoring me. So you take whatever lesson you want from that. So yeah, after that kind of Jerry Maguire moment, set up Radiant beginning of 2011, and try to do something different.
How did you find it going from, because I always ask people, because of my own experience, the difference between being a lawyer and then becoming the CEO of, I mean, even though it's a law firm, what was the shift that was required, and how did you make that shift?
That's interesting. So one of the things I learned, well, first of all, we started with incredible naivety. I mean, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, and a small group of us started it, and we hadn't a clue. And it you know, funnily enough, turns out to be not totally straightforward doing something like this. So you're under pressure, and my experience was that we all just fell back on what we knew, right? So although we set up as a company, no timesheets, fixed fee only, lots of tech, yada yada, the reality was we immediately started behaving like we were in a partnership. And it took a few years actually to really kind of go, wait a second, we're talking a good talk, but are we really, really different? And it was kind of an interesting journey. I ended up bringing in a guy called Greg Tufnell, who used to be the managing director of Mothercare and Burton Group and so on. So like a fashion retailer. I like to describe him as the least like a lawyer I could find. You know, he came in to work with us, and he ended up becoming a non-exec chairman, but started off just working with us. And I think it was amazing how polite and gentle he was with us, given our ridiculousness of how little we knew about what we were doing in terms of actually. So kind of Greg put us through boot camp 101 business, and that was a great start. And then, you know, obviously working with him ever since has been fantastic in actually understanding how to do business. I've also been a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization, so working with other people who have small companies and growing companies has been an eye-opener. Just a commonality amongst, doesn't matter really what business you're in, just the commonality is it's all basically cash flow and people, and mainly people that's the problem, right? So you know, and read an awful lot of business books. So it's been a pretty steep learning curve. Yeah, I had help from a number of people. Another one was a guy called Kieran Fenton who worked with us, and you know, it's fantastic. So a lot of people have been very generous and helpful and taken me under their wing.
So basically, people can move you forward from that position, and then a bit of training as well, it sounds like. Yeah, like
there's a lot to learn. None of it gets taught in law school.
Nothing, no, it doesn't, does it? And experience, like how, okay, what's the one biggest change what's the change that you say has been most fundamental for you in that switch?
Oh, it was stopping doing lawyering. So,
Right.
so I don't really do lawyering. I'm just kind of dangerous now. I still like drafting. It's my craft, and I love that. So I still get involved in it. But yeah, going from working in the business to on the business as the entrepreneur has been a big change. But tons of fun. It's so much fun. Kind of the construction of building a business and building a new way of doing things keeps me plenty amused.
Would you ever go back?
No. I'm ruined for life now.
I mean, that's a good sign that you're on the right path, isn't it? That's a good sign.
And I get asked a lot about whether, kind of by people who thought that, I'd be very uncomfortable because, lawyers are meant to define themselves by their profession and so on. But I found it pretty easy. It's fine.
So you like the tag CEO comes much more easily now to you than lawyer. You've got an affinity.
I think I've always been uncomfortable with the tag lawyer, and I like to joke that I set up Radiant Law because I was so embarrassed of how I'd introduced myself at cocktail parties, and lawyers have maybe unfair, but maybe not totally unfair.
I'm a CEO. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, exactly. See,
I think I might have done the same. It was interesting. The psychology of I could choose which label I put on myself. Did you, from a business, did you get funding? And if not, why not? And if so, and will you get funding? It's kind of all in the investment bubble. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, so we're a service company. So we're a law firm. I mean, you may look like a slightly piratical and odd law firm, but we are a law firm. And law firms shouldn't need funding. Right? And I get the bit if you're doing an acquisition roll-up strategy, a kind of a WPP Mark II or something like that, then you could take money, but you shouldn't in a service industry necessarily need funding. And at the beginning, we just self-funded with the loan into the business, and it was fine. Got going. You basically fund by just not taking money out, right, and just becoming a massive income cut, right? It's kind of the reality of the situation. And then kind of later on, we've thought about it and talked to people. People approached us, and people are on the edges of the industry trying to find ways to invest. And there are plenty of PEs and VCs out there who are looking at ways to invest, but it's actually quite a hard industry to invest in. A lot of the PEs who've tried have kind of come away rather grumpily, muttering about bloody partners. And when I have some sympathy with them, I think it is quite a difficult entity to put money into. And then so they end up in LawTech. So we have all this froth and so on around there. So we haven't. And the other aspect to it is my brother runs a software as a service company, which is very much one of those companies where you have to invest a lot up front to build a product, to sell it, to market it. You're building a high growth company. And so therefore you almost inevitably, you don't have to, because there are examples like Basecamp, but you almost inevitably end up taking money. And then I've seen the journey he's been on of that, because as soon as you take a pound, you're owned by other people, and they want you to spend it, and they want you to go as fast as possible, and maybe you take off, or maybe you hit a wall, and they're kind of just taking a punt, and it's your life's work, or at least it's a serious commitment from you, and you've got a portfolio of one company. So that whole thing suddenly looks very unattractive to me, and and it's also, it takes so long, right? I mean, we all thought that we could, started Radiant almost 10 years ago. It was like 2011, beginning of 2011. And, I thought we'd be done by now. And I mean, poor Richard Susskind, he's been muttering about this for a long time. But, all of us thought, oh, God, it's another 5 years, now become another 10 years. Given that it's been such a slow market to move, and given the conservatism, and given, although, I like to think I'm on the right side of history still, bloody hell, it's taken a long time. So taking money and being on someone else's timetable in that context is quite high risk. And I think it's quite high risk for a lot of the legal tech companies that have taken money. So I don't think we'll ever take money. But we might do if we did spin-offs with tech and so on, which we've discussed. So. but not the core business.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because often people set up that, I mean, if it's not for a reputation and a title, then it's for usually freedom and the ability to make one's own decisions, autonomy in some way, shape, or form. So yeah, it's and the irony of that, based on people and cash, is you don't ever have as much autonomy as you think you're going to get, and freedom is not as easy to come by as you might expect. Working for yourself does not necessarily mean that suddenly you're free and easy to do whatever you want. I always say you're still working for your client, and actually your client controls a little bit. I mean, your clients control that string instead of a boss. They become your boss because you're like, okay, right, well, I've got to build something that the clients actually are going to be. However, I also heard this phrase, and this was the one that stuck with me, is the best investment is sales, and you just got to get out there and do what you can and sell. And in theory, how does it feel being on because I would say you guys are on the cutting edge of the legal industry at the moment. How does it feel being out there? You're saying it's slow to move.
Well, so we have this incredible client base. They're kind of huge companies and banks and so on, and they've been amazingly supportive. And so in some ways it's been fantastic, you know, client list to die for, but everyone just uses us for a little bit, right? And everyone's very conservative and cautious, and a lot of people don't want to hear that there might be anything wrong with how it's all working right now, right? So in the legal industry. So yeah, it's you know, it's taken a lot longer than I was expecting.
Yeah. What's the hurdle? Is it conservative? Is it like, well, we don't really want to go both feet in, or is it that people can't see the actual problem? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, I think there may be a decision-making problem because what's happened is that the in-house teams understandably have become the gatekeepers for the business, and so all decisions relating to legal stuff get made through them. But the in-house teams, you know, are obviously on a spectrum, and some are incredibly progressive and so on, but a lot have been quite conservative, dare I say, in terms of adjusting to it, and perhaps have felt the heat therefore from their broader business because, you know, everyone else is kind of digitalizing and yada yada and all the rest of it, and legal's kind of going, well, you know, the two big topics always they come up with GCs is how do I do more for less and how do I demonstrate business value, right? It's kind of, so I think the fact they're feeding that heat is you know, says something. So we can't go and sell to sales, right? We can't sell to the procurement team. We can't sell to the CFO because we'll get shot by the GC. They don't like, you know, you going round. So you've got to come through. But the stuff where we add the most value is we speed up your sales process. We speed up your procurement process. We accelerate your contracting. And that is something that's incredibly important to the business, but may not be top of mind as the most important thing to legal, who, you know, more of a risk management mindset. There are lots of counterexamples, right? I mean, you know, there are some incredibly progressive, very cool in-house teams doing very, very cool things, and a lot of the innovations happening there, but not all of them, right? And that's
so it's almost like you've got a split on your ideal client, your actual ideal client, and then you've got the gatekeeper, the real ideal client, and they're both going to have different risk profiles. You're more suited to one and actually less suited to the other, but by nature, they're going to be very different.
Yeah,
that's kind of a.
And we've also seen, you know, we've seen a lot of people, you know, getting excited about legal tech, but actually what's interesting is there are a lot of companies out there that do not position themselves as legal tech, but might be otherwise seen as that because they do not want to be selling to lawyers. So if you look at the big contract management systems and so on, you know, there's a huge debate, really. Well, there's a fight going on in the companies that I'm not sure the legal team are even aware is happening around who owns contracting. And, you know, I'm fascinated when I see kind of the websites of vendors of large contract management systems who are pitching at sales and procurement, and they just see legal as just another, you know, minor stakeholder along with HR and finance. Right?
Interesting, yeah.
Because they don't want to go near legal because legal can't get an IT budget together and don't seem to have access to that and so on. So
Yeah.
it's a really interesting what's going on within large corporations. And I think lawyers are missing a trick on this one because they have so much to offer on the topic and so much they can bring. And, you know, there are so many bright people in law and so on, that with small adjustments, I think legal could really be kind of, you know, owning that as a process and adding tons of value to it.
Yeah.
I want to help them do that.
And not taking up, I mean, certainly if you're working on the tech route, it's not going to take as much time. However, I mean, as somebody who on a small level has implemented even just Microsoft Teams, which is supposed to be plug and play, I just like to say, it ain't that easy. And that's when I guess it becomes, you've got to have the experts coming in, they're implementing and looking at all the systemization. Like, how do you, all right, just out of curiosity, how do you make those things easy for people? How do you use your team? How does your team kind of make the process easy?
Well, a lot of it's not just tech, right? I mean, it's really just good old customer service and perspective. So our first value is start with the client's needs. And that's the kind of the North Star for us of what do you actually need? And then we'll figure out a way of trying to give you that to you.
Right.
Unfortunately, that's quite unusual in our industry, right? But if it's tech, you know, we'll often host the tech ourselves and give them access because it's actually easier than trying to get it installed internally and so on. So we do a lot of that document automation, for example. And we've got a team of developers and so on, so we can set you up and get you going and automate your contracts and all of that stuff because it's quite hard to build that capability internally. So yeah, we do that, but often it turns out that what you really need is a shorter contract and a more reasonable contract, not just necessarily a lot of tax.
Yeah, no. And I think that's certainly something because we work with slightly smaller businesses. I know you guys are at the corporate level, and that's what they want. They want just give me a one-pager that I can click on online, and that makes things really simple. You know, it's that sort of thing that. Yeah. It's as simple as that. Let's get a contract that's easy to put on a website that can tick a box, and then we're in the contract process.
Yeah. Let's make it easy.
To people, that's they're not necessarily saying that, but that's what it ends up that we end up saying this is what you need.
And it's very possible, right? Yeah. I mean, I think I love contracting problem because it's so gnarly. And what I mean by the contracting problem is that no one apart from the lawyers think contracting is a great experience, right? You know, they think it's horrific, and I think it can be a lot better, and I think it's very important. And there's so much opportunities to improve it, but a lot of it is just stop doing stupid stuff, like stop sending out massive agreements that are incredibly unreasonable and, you know, generating a lot of pain. So
yeah, this phrase a lot. It's one that particularly frustrates me. Is this is the way things have always been done?
Red rag to the bull, yeah. Yeah, no, very frustrating. And when you actually dig into it, the reason it's being done that way is just kind of passed down. One partner has beaten it into their trainee, who then in due course beats it into their trainee. And there are so many opinions, but they're completely random. So they're like kind of strongly held random opinions that people desperately hold on to. So I'm always interested in people like Ken Adams, who's tried to be a little bit more kind of, you know, well, let's come up with a standard, or any of the people out there who've tried to go, can we get past just kind of, you know, trial by fire training, you know, which just leads to strongly held random opinions of nonsense.
Actually, just questioning that process is a powerful way of innovating. It's just saying, how do I do it? Oh, why do I do that? Oh, we've got to do that, and that because of this. Maybe I don't need to do that, and that. And just having that questioning. If I were an in-house lawyer right now, that's been the way that I'd be looking at things. What else did I want to ask you about? I wanted to talk personal, because I know right now you're in like a small piece of paradise. And as I told you at the beginning, you're on my people to be jealous of list just for today. Tell me, what has life been like for you over the last few weeks? What are you enjoying doing that you weren't able to do? And how is the team enjoying life a bit differently?
Yeah. Well, we have, so I'm in Cape Town right now, and I'm damned if I'm coming back again to the UK until it all passes over. But so it is very nice here. So most of the team are based in Cape Town, and we've got kind of developers all around the world, but most team are based in Cape Town. And although we've got an office here, we kind of said, look, it'd be nice to see you on Mondays and Thursdays, but otherwise do what you want. And we've always been kind of more focused on outputs than inputs. You know, we don't have and so they were all used to working from home. So in one way, we didn't miss a beat when we closed the office pretty early by relative standards, and certainly very early by South African standards. Everyone just kept going, and we've got a lot of kind of data about what's happening and so on. So we knew that we just fine. Everything just kept going, didn't drop all the clients and so on. But I think it has been tough for them. I mean, it's tough for everyone, right? I mean, you know, this is not any kind of very stressful time, but our kind of number one worry is you know, kind of mental well-being and how they're holding up as a group. And it's generally been okay. We've had a wonderful series of sessions. A big shout out for Paul Gilbert. I don't know if you know Paul, but
no.
LBC Wise Counsel. Paul's like kind of the inside secret of all the in-house lawyers in the UK, but he's been doing a wonderful series with the team on some of these kind of quite touchy-feely topics that are actually, I think, incredibly important right now, kind of mental well-being and so on, and the ability to put your hand up and say, actually, I'm struggling, and it's actually not okay right now, and so on. So that's been fantastic having him with the team. And we try to stay in touch, but it's it is a concern as we all adjust. But personally, I'm fine. I like reading books and looking at the sea, so I'm very happy.
Yeah, do you want to give us a quick tour? You want to give us a little look at your guys, for all of those in central London, one-bedroom apartments.
No one's going to like me for that.
Airbnb, where forward. Awesome. Look, have you got, one of the things that I know, well, when we talked previously, you very much talked about kind of philosophies that you have, and philosophies in building a team, specifically, things that are important to you as a businessman, but also kind of person to person, and what's important to you in philosophically building a business?
So I think you need to understand your motivations when you're doing this. And I think, you know, perhaps one of the biggest mistakes I've made is not always choosing to work with the people with the same motivations as myself. So, this is, you know, it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot longer. There is no overnight success. And, you know, it's always 10 years of working in the background before you finally, if you are successful, you have a big success. And so you need to kind of think about what your motivations are and what's going to do it for you. And if it's making a quick buck, it may be, it's not a great way of actually keeping going in the face of adversity and so on. So for me, the things that I love about it is one, I love building stuff, and so the creating the company and I love solving problems. So creating the company and you know, getting good results for clients and really solving problems and so on makes me immensely happy. And you know, I've always thought that it's incredibly important that you kind of align your interests with the customer and actually try to solve their problems. And so we probably spent 7 or 8 years building a new type of business model where, you know, my favorite quote is Charlie Munger's, never ever think about anything else when you should be thinking about the powers of incentives. And I think the way the legal industry, private practice, and the timesheet and partnership system is a fundamentally broken way of actually improving things. But creating a new one is hard. So there was kind of a big time doing that before we could really work on the problem of really improving contracting, which we're now doing. It's terribly exciting. So that was kind of one motivation, building that. And then the second was, I think I've always been a bit of an outsider, a bit of an oddball. I could have had a perfectly sensible career carrying on, and that's amazing, I think, that I survived as long as I did in traditional law firms. And you know, it really frustrates me that a lot of the people, I think most interesting people in law, tend to leave at about 3 or 5 years qualified. Right? They actually get out. They go off into the business, or they hop from in-house into another role and so on. And we're actually driving out of the legal industry a lot of very interesting, quirky people who think a bit differently and are going to add tons of value, but don't fit into the monoculture that we seem so driven to create. So it was a big motivation for me to try to create a space where people who are perhaps think a little bit differently and are not just, you know, utterly focused on making partner, and there are plenty of places where you can go to make partner, could thrive. So that's always been a big motivator for me, and kind of something I
love that. Sounds like a coming home. Like, I was going to say black sheep. I was speaking to a lot of people in the legal industry. Like, I've always just been a little bit different. I'm like, oh, I wonder why. I tend to interview people that I think are outside of the mold, because for me, that's what interests me. And of course, there are plenty of people that can be within that mold and are different in their own way. But it's interesting to see how different people manage it. Some people, like you said, there's someone, you know, speaking to Sarah Weiss the other day, and she was saying she actually just learned to be herself in the environment where she was feeling so out of being herself, and she just had to be herself. And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. Never
radical thinking. That's
radical, just be who you are. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bad enough problem of, you know, we self-select for a certain group of a certain type, but the real problem I fear is that too often we have people desperately trying to fit into that model who aren't naturally like that, and
that's
who
true.
are just trying to hold it together. And I think that is one of the reasons why there is, you know, serious mental health issues and serious problems in law. You know, I mean, huge issues that I think are now starting to be talked about.
I think that was definitely my experience as well, and I can relate to that kind of thinking. Oh, maybe I need to do more of that. Maybe I need to play more golf. I've never played golf. I'm dyspraxic. I can't play golf.
Yeah, I'm not
like
golf.
Well, that's maybe what I should do, and maybe I should go out and drink more in the evenings, because that's what people do. So yeah, I can really relate to that change. And you have talking kind of around the incentive model and the fair trade model and bringing people in. I know you've got a very collaborative approach with your team. Do you want to share a little bit about that and how you work?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of companies around the world that are really wrestling with now and really trying to build a slightly more humane environment and a thoughtful place. And there's a wonderful book called Reinventing Organizations, kind of to read about that kind of thing, but it includes, you know, distributed decision making and just a more inclusive environment that doesn't have to be completely happy clappy. It can be very high performing, but can be I think a better place to work. And so we're, you know, very keen to do that. A lot of how we think about things is to try to distribute decision making and empower the team and all the rest of it. And it's for very practical reasons, which is people actually doing the work have probably got the best idea of how to fix it, right? And so, you know, we're big users of lean, and we have this wonderful professor who comes in every Thursday, emeritus professor Norman Ford.
Amazing.
He's wonderful, and he kind of, you know, I feel like total grasshopper whenever I'm hanging out with Norman. It's one of my favorite calls of the week. And but he works with a team on teaching them kind of, you know, how lean works. And I love that, where you have kind of like top down kind of challenges, you know, that, you know, a few of us kind of set like, this is where we think we need to be going next. But then the whole team is part of figuring out how to actually do it. And it's led to, you know, incredible changes in the organization that have been figured out by the team. So, you know, for example, the big push the first quarter of this year was getting to half-day turnarounds in all our contracts. You know, we were running at about 2 days, which is way faster than in-house teams typically run at. That's kind of considered, I think, a good in the managed legal services standard 2-day turnaround. We're now a half day. 86% of our matters last week were half day, and we did that with a team of figuring out exactly how to do it. I think we've basically halved the stress, doubled the productivity, and quartered the time to turn around matters. And now we've got a next challenge we're working on, and the team's all fired up working on that, which is such fun. So yeah, very kind of trying to get everyone involved in you know, continuous improvement and improving things for clients, so much is at the heart of how we think about the work.
And it kind of brings us back to that piece at the beginning where you were saying, well, this was kind of the way I was taught. This is how things have always been done. And then you're learning all these new ways of doing things, and you have to implement that. Like, again, it sounds like you're bringing in the experts to say, how do we actually implement this? Like because you weren't taught that. You're just learning these new things now. And it's like, oh, Lee, okay.
And there's so much out there, right? There's as soon as you kind of lift your head up and look at all of the kind of the stuff out there in the world of, you know, design's obviously a hot one, and project management used to be hot, but all of these topics, right, are incredibly relevant to what we're doing. So that's tons of fun of just learning all the time and figuring new stuff out. And I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of this. You know, it's like the onion. We're barely a layer in. Lots to do.
I'm excited for you. Tell me, all right, I guess my final question is, tell me what your vision for the legal profession is, or for Radiant Law. Either one might be easier.
Well, for us, you know, what I love is the contracting problem. So I think we're going to remain focused on commercial contracts, which will, you know, they need to spend $20 trillion a year under those. So it's a pretty meaty topic. And I think when we focus on that, I think we will be increasingly distributed. It was already happening, but I don't think we'll ever open an office. We'll still have the office in Cape Town. I don't think we'll ever open an office again, but we'll have people working on that with us around the world. And we're already doing that in Toronto. We just want to keep figuring out ways of, you know, adding value to clients. And
never more value.
I'm grateful. I'm 48. I've got another at least 30 years in me. If you take anything from my father, who's still working, and I'm excited that it's going to take at least that long to put a real dent into this problem. So I'll have plenty to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, awesome. I love that, and a dent in the universe, as they say, just making that dent, making the dent in the profession or whatever aspect. It sounds like you've got a lot driving you as well, Alex. I'm really excited to see where you guys go. How can people get in contact with you and find out a little bit more about Radiant Law? Yeah, so
radiantlaw.com. I'm on LinkedIn, but you'll really find me on Twitter, where Alex Hamilton Rad. I tend to be big. So.
Awesome. So I will make sure those go at the end of the video. Thank you, everybody who has watched. If you have enjoyed what Alex has got to say, please do get in contact with him. For those of you that are enjoying our series, you can subscribe below. I think we're at like 16 subscribes, so you know, every subscribe it matters. Or you can see this on LinkedIn, which will be where we'll be posting a lot of useful wisdom for the legal community. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Joe. It's been fun.
We will see you again soon.
Awesome.